order of business is the pledge of allegiance. And if we can go ahead and stand, and since we're the only ones here, I'll have Trustee Alcala to please lead us to the pledge of allegiance. Behind.
Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So he could have pledged to me, you would have been there.
All right. Now, because of the continued COVID-19 restrictions, and limitations of people allowed to congregate, only a limited number of staff along with the Board of Trustees will be allowed in person. In order to accommodate public participation, a continued virtual link will be provided via live streaming on RCC's YouTube channel at the link noted. Submission of public comments. Members of the public can join the meeting virtually through Zoom to directly voice their comments to the board. Visit the Board of Trustees page on RCCD website and complete the form to speak. A link to join the meeting will automatically be sent to you. Or number two, written public comments can also be sent via the written public comments link, which will be read during the public comment portion of the meeting, which today will follow the closed session. Submission by email must be received prior to 4 p.m. the day of the meeting to be included. So right now we have a closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9 D2, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, recommended action to be determined. And that is item 1A. And so at this time, this board will reconvene in closed session aside from this room. So we will be back. All right, everybody, let's I don't know how long this lasts. They're saying 30 minutes. Then we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Big presentation. It can go anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes each. And there's talk. I'm going to say 8 to 9 o'clock. Oh. Let's see. What was our first one we did here? 10:30 or something?
First one, was like an hour, 10 minutes. It ended an hour, 15 after it started 5 minutes away.
Yeah. Second time? And they had a resolution about. So we have one of those.
Oh.
It's the mandate. one, and it came in the next day after our last board meeting. But I don't know who's gonna come and fill out the original comment. At this point, just one. You may know how to get a hold of us.
Yeah, the one I actually called me.
Yeah, I know, because he wanted it.
Yeah, no,
He was worried, and I said, we'll be fine.
Yeah.
Well, just trust me, we'll be fine. Yeah, I told him, I said, you and I are almost attached at the hip during these meetings. We got this down pat.
Yeah, I don't know. What's that? Oh, good. I'm so glad.
If it's not 9:30, that's 10. You don't have to have. It's the same way. I think that's probably the deal. I'm gonna tell them. We met with the council. I did a pass to you. Thank you. Yes, we were gonna start. It doesn't show up on my calendar. Okay. Thank you.
Bill. Got it. All right, ready? Ready, everybody? Ready? Okay. I'll call this meeting back to order. We did have the original opening at 5 o'clock, and then this board went into closed session. And we have now come out of closed session at 6:18 with nothing to report. And so now we will continue with the agenda, and I do apologize for the delay. So the next item after the closed session is comments from the public. And we do have a comment, a written comment from the public that was actually submitted. And then it went to this deep, dark hole. Oh, excuse me? We did the Pledge of Allegiance. You all were not here, but we did do the Pledge of Allegiance. So all of the first order of business, the Pledge of Allegiance, submission of public comments, and the closed session, all of that has been already done. And so now we're actually on to comments from the public. That's where we're continuing at this point. And as I was indicating, evidently there was one particular comment that was submitted to us previously on the last board meeting, but somehow it went into that deep, dark hole that happens with technology, and we did not get it till afterwards. So we're going to read that one now. But let me read this statement first. Board invites comments from the public regarding any matters within the jurisdiction of the Board of Trustees. Due to the Ralph M. Brown Act, the board cannot address or respond to comments made under public comment. So this is from on Monday, May 17th, Luis Garcia wrote the following. Good afternoon. I am writing to you because I have concerns in which staff members at Riverside Community College District are being told to return to work in person on June 15th, 2021. I feel that with us returning, we will be the forefront of a test to see if people will get COVID or not. The misconception of us not getting COVID because we are vaccinated is completely wrong. The vaccine does not prevent us from getting COVID. It just may not hospitalize us if we get COVID, but we can still get very sick and be out of work for weeks or even months. Many of us are immunocompromised, in which we get sick for any little thing. Having us return all at once when we don't even know how things are going to transpire is extremely harmful to us. We were told by the chancellor that we were hired to work in person and not remotely, which we understand, but also at the time that we were hired, we were not in a pandemic. These are different times. There are more strains of COVID out there. Not everyone can get vaccinated. We have worked extremely hard to continue to serve our students while dealing with this pandemic and dealing with losses and hardships in our lives as well. Our emotional well-being is not being taken into consideration. It seems that our hard work this past year is not being taken into consideration either. We were told that the enrollment is down, and that is why we need to go ahead and return to work in person. I have spoken to many students this past year and have been told that many of our students have had to drop out of school because one or both of their parents have passed and they've had to step up and work. They experienced such hardships, they had to make a decision between working or going to school. Of course, they've chosen to work because they have to put food on the table and a roof over their head. The low enrollment is not because of us not doing our jobs. We've been working extremely hard and are extremely dedicated to our jobs. I understand that yes, we do need to return to in-person work at one point, but we are not there yet. We need to return to a safe environment and not be treated as guinea pigs to see if we will get sick or not. It is extremely hurtful that we are not being heard and we are going to be returning with everyone else, not knowing what the consequences and or dangers of bringing us back all together will do. Things should be figured out before we return, not while we are there. Why not stagger us? Why not allow us to return a few at a time within the next couple of months to see how things go? Alternate our schedules. Why are we not being taken into consideration like the faculty is? Faculty is not returning until the end of August and students are not returning until the end of August. Why is our well-being and safety not being considered? It is very hurtful to not be acknowledged for all the hard work and dedication that we as staff have put into our jobs, especially this past year. To have us return all on the same day, not knowing what the consequences could be regardless if people are vaccinated or not, is an extremely poor decision. We shouldn't wait until something happens for a change to be made. What if we all go back into work in person and we all get COVID and we all get sick? Then there will be nobody to assist. All we ask is for us to be taken into consideration and to have a more realistic approach. Consider our health issues, consider mental well-being. More than ever, this is a time in which we need to be shown that we are valued and that the district does care about us. This has been an extremely difficult year. Many of us have stayed home. We have followed the stay-at-home orders, kept away from everybody, didn't go anywhere unless we really had to. We have worked hard to be safe, and now we are going to be used as guinea pigs to see how it goes and if it's safe for faculty and students to return. Many of us have extreme anxiety thinking of returning and having everyone around. Had this been taken into consideration, returning all at once is not a considerate decision. The chancellor said that he considers us partners, not employees and employer. If this is true, then this is the time to show it. We want our voices to be heard. Thank you for your time. And so thank you, Mr. Luis Garcia, and this was submitted last Monday, but we did read it for tonight's meeting, so thank you for that submission. And with that, are there any other public comments? And we have no other public comments, and there's nobody in the audience. So we have no public hearing, which is item 3, and that moves us to the chancellor's report. It's all yours, Dr.
Thank you, Madam President. Drive-through graduation ceremonies during June 1st through 3rd were conducted at Moreno Valley College, Norco College, and Riverside City College, respectively. At all 3 colleges, it was very festive and colorful event. I know the presidents will report this at our next week, so I will not dwell into it. It was a whole day event, and it was a bright, sunny, and hot day, but very enjoyable and rewarding experience. Preliminary figures seem to indicate that the overall number of degrees and certificates granted this year were slightly higher than last
Dr.
year.
Esau, could you please pull that a little closer to you, the microphone?
Oh, the microphone.
I'm just
They
having a
can't
hard
hear
time
what
hearing.
you're saying.
Wow. Sorry. Don't have a very strong voice.
Oh, yeah, that's better.
Is that better now?
Yep.
Okay, okay. So I'll start. Drive-through graduation ceremonies during June 1st through 3rd were conducted at Moreno Valley College, Norco College, and Riverside City College, respectively. At all 3 colleges, it was very festive and colorful events. I know the president will give a lot more information next week, so I will not dwell into it. It was a whole day event. It was bright, sunny, and hot. I was sweating, but very enjoyable and rewarding experience. Preliminary figures seem to indicate that the overall number of degrees certificates granted this year were slightly higher than last year. There was plenty of opportunities to speak with the graduates and their future plans, and it was very refreshing to listen to their ambitions, and many already knew where they were transferring to and what field of study they wished to pursue. It is an end of a very long and difficult and stressful academic year. But thanks to the relentless commitment of the faculty, the classified professional, and the management, once again, we did it. We did not fail to meet the district's noble goals and mission. Summer enrollment remains concerning since 2 weeks away from the start of the summer semester term. We are still about 22 to 26% below our targets at Moreno Valley College and Norco colleges, while Riverside seems to be almost at target at 97.1. It is, however, encouraging to note when we compare the enrollment figures at the same time last year, we are still slightly better this year than we were last year, and therefore we hope that our numbers will rise up to the 90 percentile in the coming 2 weeks. We have just learned that fraud enrollment is being caught at the state CCC apply level, and some are escaping to some colleges, such as the College of Siskiyou, whose summer enrollment is inundated with fraudulent enrollment for their summer program with over 15,000 fake applicants. Many colleges have been hit by this fraudulent attempt, and RCCD is no exception. Our district has also been receiving large influx of similar spam applications over the last week. Most of them, however, thankfully are being caught at the CC applies spam filter, and those that make it through are being deactivated of their student email account to prevent them from accessing our system. So we are still on the alert. Summer Math Institute recruitment drive showed interest of up to 789 students. However, after a careful screening of the people, of those expressing interest, it was rather disappointing that only 254 had the correct need profile to qualify for the program. Furthermore, only 23% of those qualified students expressed interest to take the math that is relevant for the STEM pathway, while 77 showed the math statistics for the humanities, social sciences path. Our goal was to increase the STEM path because that's where a great deal of high-paying jobs exist. Looking ahead, we are also looking at tackling major challenges in our effort to fully return our operations to pre-fall 2019 levels. As I have repeatedly stated, our plans are built on a set of assumptions that guarantee the safety of our students, staff, faculty, and managers. We therefore are very carefully monitoring the progress in the rapid decline in infection rates, death rates, case per 100,000, which today is down to a historic 1.6, and positivity rate, which is the lowest it has ever been at 1.2%. Our hope is that during this summer period, that vaccination rate will reach at between 70 to 80%, thereby achieving the desired herd immunity. As of today, we are at about 50%, with 195,552 that are partially vaccinated and over 866,379 that are fully vaccinated. We're still very eagerly awaiting for the FDA to grant one or more of the vaccines full registration so that we may be able to mandate the vaccine for all our students and our employees. And a resolution that was going to be discussed tonight is intended to prepare us for that situation. We still have a number of questions that are ahead of us. We're trying to set up the system together by working with the experience of other sister institutions such as UCR, the system of collecting and storing the vaccination data so that it will be able, we are able to track. And also that we are also eagerly awaiting for the CDC, Cal OSHA, and the Department of Public Health guidelines to be updated in time to enable us implement our Plan A, because our Plan A is contingent on the fact that social distancing will not be required. Because if we have to have 6 feet of social distancing, there is no way we can return back to the fullest possible. So we want to know as to when should the cutoff date for the decision-making to move to Plan B. And so far, we are planning to have that done during the week of August 2nd to the 6th. So that by that time, if we don't have any clarity, we will make the determination that we will move to Plan B instead of Plan A. That way, all our faculty and staff will have plenty of time to make that transition. The good thing is that we've already made detailed planning for Plan B, and therefore we hope that that transition will not be that painful. And that ends my report. And next, we have resolution number 71, 2021 to direct district leadership to require evidence of COVID-19 vaccination for all RCCD students and employees. And this is the resolution that I've talked about. And I will call on President Robin Steinbach, who is also the chair of Safe Return Task Force, to present it.
Thank you, Chancellor Isak. Good evening, members of the board. At the request of the board, the district has prepared a resolution for your consideration that will direct district leadership to require evidence of the COVID-19 vaccinations for all RCCD students and employees. Now, this is predicated on a number of assumptions. And the first and foremost is that the FDA fully I'm looking for the proper language. Provides regular approval of one of the vaccinations for COVID-19. We come at this work from a perspective of equity and a perspective of safety. We recognize, as the chancellor has indicated in his very thorough report, what is the trends that have been occurring in our region and also our state in terms of low positivity rates, as well as the increasing number of vaccinations. The 3 colleges have been sites for vaccination clinics, making vaccinations available not only to our students and employees, but also members of the community. This is a bold resolution. It's a bold resolution in that it's not so bold, the chancellor would probably remind me, in that we're aligning with higher education. We're aligning with our partners in CSU as well as UC. We're also aligning with the other private universities in our immediate region. I would say we're also bold because we'd be one of the few community college districts yet in California that have approved, that seek this kind of resolution. We would join San Diego Community College District. It also is a 3-college district, a multi-college district here in Southern California. We, of course, will continue to ensure that we have safe practices that are based upon Cal OSHA, based upon the Centers for Disease Control and the California Department of Public Health. But we know from epidemiologists in the highest levels in our locally, as regionally, as well as in the nation and globally as well, that vaccinations create the best insurance for us against the spread of COVID. It's not my intention to read this resolution to you this evening, but I stand before you as a humble servant in the district to answer your questions.
Thank you. This is the first read, so we'll represent it again next week for your approval. Thank you, Dr. Steinbach. And that ends my report.
Thank you, Dr. Isak. All right, so that moves us into board committee reports. And under board committee reports, the very first is teaching and learning. And I turn this over to Trustee Bakar.
Good evening. Is Dr. Kim here?
I am here on Zoom. I apologize for not being there in person, but I woke up with some coughing, so.
Thank you. I had the bright lights and I couldn't quite see out there, so I apologize. So good to have you online with us this evening, Dr. Kim. If you could please share with the board the information with regards to our 2019 through 24 strategic plan update.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure this evening to introduce Dr. Lijuan Zhai and the college representatives from each of our colleges to provide you with a direct update on our strategic plan and the objectives that we have set forth for our district and for each of the colleges. So Dr. Zhai.
Hi, thank you, Dr. Kim. Good evening, Board of Trustees, Dr. Isak, and all the guests. And today, with my colleagues, Dean David Torres from District Office, and Dean Jake Cavari from Moreno Valley, and also Dr. Kevin Fleming from Norco College, and Dr. Christine DiMamo from RCC. We are going to provide an update on RCCD 2019 and 2024 strategic plan. Okay, RCCD strategic plan is built on past accomplishments, grounded in lessons learned, and thoughtful planning. Our district will spend about 2 years reflecting on past data, conducting trend analysis, and engage in different stakeholders. And we came up with 6 strategic goals and 34 objectives. Can you move to the next slide? Okay, these are the 6 strategic goals we came up with, and we are placing student access, success, and equity in the center of our planning. And each strategic goal is an aspirational statement about the future state of the district. And each goal has associated objectives and the key measures of success. And this plan describes the pathway we will take to achieve and sustain a mission and the vision as the community's college district in Riverside. Next. Okay, this chart shows a strategic goal alignments. And strategic alignment is part of the overall process when making plans. Strategic alignment will accomplish 3 goals. And the number 1 is to ensure strong connection among our mission and the goals district-wide. Number 2 is to fine-tune our strategic goals and the objectives and discover implementation gaps. And number 3 is to improve efficiency and effectiveness across the district. As you can see from the chart, RCCD and the college strategic plans are aligned, as well as we're aligning with vision for success and guided pathways. Next, please. Okay. Key performance indicators are the performance matrix that can be tracked, measured, and analyzed. And the KPIs are used to understand how our district is progressing toward achieving our goals. It is a tool to understand and measure success. RCCD 2019 to 2024 strategic plan has 15 KPIs, as you can see on the slides. And for today's presentation, we will only focus on student access and success. And this is a work in progress. We will continue to refine our KPIs as we go. And next, I will invite my colleague, David Torres, report on KPIs. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Zhai. Thank you. These KPIs are updating the indicators that were published in the RCCD Strategic Plan 2019 to 2024. The data sources for all the graphics are included at the bottom of each slide. Throughout these slides, the darker graphics represent actual figures, while the lighter graphics represent the goal for the indicator. This graphic represents and demonstrates the RCCD student headcount met the target by 2019-20. As the present academic year is coming to a close, this indicator will be updated when that data is available. Next slide, please. This indicator updates the table in the strategic plan detailing the growth of special admit students. Special admit students are designated by the State Chancellor's Office as a student currently enrolled in the K through 12. While we fell short of our ambitious goals district-wide, this population of students has grown 29% since 2017. Next slide, please. This graphic represents the district capture rate. The capture rate is the percentage of feeder high school graduates aged 20 and under who attend any RCCD college for the first time in the following fall. This methodology was adapted based on the college-going rate methodology for graduating high school students developed by the California Post-Secondary Education Commission. While our district capture rate was on a gradual steady incline, surpassing targets from fall 2017 through fall 2019, predictably, as student attendance declined in fall of 2020, the capture rate also decreased. Next slide, please. This graphic shows district financial aid recipients from 2017-18 through 2019-20 compared to their projected 2% annual growth. Examining California Promise Grant recipients, the dark blue columns, the goal was met in 2018 and very nearly met in 2019. District-wide became very close to meeting our Pell Grant targets for both years, as seen by the dark and light columns in orange. Next slide, please. For this indicator, the overall goal is to increase AA, AS, and ADT awards by 15% annually. The district met this goal for 2018-19, surpassing our target by over 700 awards. And we met 94% of our target in 2019-20. Next slide. For this success indicator, the goal is to increase certificates 15% annually. For 2018-19, the district exceeded its goal for awarding certificates, but this was not the case for 2019-20. Next slide, please. For transfers to the UC and CSU taken from our original district strategic plan, the district met its goal in 2018-19, and for 2019-20, 98% of the target had been met. Next slide, please. This indicator comes from the CTE outcome survey that is conducted annually via the Chancellor's Office. This question asks former CTE students if they are working in a job very closely or closely related to their field of study. The goal of 3% annual growth was met. Next slide, please. This indicator also comes from that same CTE outcome survey conducted annually. This was asked of students who exited the community college system and who did not transfer to any other post-secondary institution, and it reports the proportion who attained the district county living wage for a single adult measured immediately following the academic year of exit. The percent of students attaining a living wage increased from 2017 to 2018, despite not meeting the annual 15% targeted growth. Next slide, please. These data come from the Guided Pathways Cohort Dashboard. This reflects first-time students attempting a full load of classes during their first term. For both the 2018-19 and 2019-20 years, the goal of 10% annual increase was met. Compared to the 2017-18 cohort, the 2019-20 students attempting a full load in their first term increased 27%. Lending support to the idea that the Guided Pathways model is contributing to positive changes in student course-taking behaviors. Next slide, please. These data also come from the Guided Pathways Cohort Dashboard, and they reflect first-time students attempting 24 or more units during their first year. For both the 2018-19 and 2019-20 years, the goal of 10% annual increase was met. Compared to the 2017-18 cohort, students attempting a full load in their first year increased 25% over the 2017-18 base. Next slide, please. And these data also come from that same Guided Pathways Cohort Dashboard. This graphic shows first-time students successfully completing both transfer level math and English during their first year. For both the 2018-19 and 2019-20 years, the goal of 20% annual increase was met. Compared to the 2017-18 cohort, Students successfully completing transfer level math and English increased 48% over the 2017-18 base. With more students completing these essential courses earlier in their educational careers, these students are better positioned to complete their educational plans more quickly, saving valuable time and resources. And at this point, I'm going to hand over the presentation to my colleague from Moreno Valley, Jake Kavari.
Good evening, board and community. From Moreno Valley College, what you see in front of you here are four major ones that we kind of looked at for our strategic planning over this last year. And what it told us was a story that we wanted to follow through and then really put actions to the work that we are going to do into this next year and setting our priorities. So what you see in front of here is that with the alignment of the district, we have attempting 12 plus units and 24 plus units. So what we're seeing with our first time students is they are putting that effort into and attempting. So we were able to meet our goal and in alignment with the district. What we didn't look into, and that's a leading indicator. Then we looked at our lagging indicators here, which is the number of degrees and number of certificates awarded, and in that journey for the student. And what we saw is that we saw increases in the number of degrees, and we saw a slight decrease for the number of certificates awarded. So for us, we wanted to ask ourselves, what do we do with this and how do we move forward? So next slide, please. First off, we wanted to start with our successes as a college and really focus in. And what you see in front of here is something implemented at Moreno Valley College of theory of change. And what we see with our theory of change is that we want to increase the success for all our students while closing equity gaps. Some great points here to really look at here over from 2015-16 to 2019-20. I just want to point out a couple of those is we see our increases of the number of students receiving degrees or certificates, 126% increase over that time frame. We see a small decrease here in the most recent year of data that's available. However, when you look a little bit deeper into the equity, you see our Black, African American, and our Latinx, Hispanic students, we see increase of 86%, and then also 137% increases of the students identified. And that is something that with our theory of change, really just shows we were actually honorable mention at the state chancellor's office for the Rice Award for this very reason. They looked at data of this sort. What we also see on the right-hand side is just our outcome survey, our career technical education outcome survey, just to be clear about that. And this is collected and just showing the increases of hourly wages of our students that are starting in our programs in CTE, and then what their wages are after, and we see these increases. So I'm going to read off a couple things that came out of that survey here that are just important notes about our programs, and that's specifically our Ben Clark Training Center. So 91% of our students report being very satisfied or satisfied with their training upon completion. 63% is the overall change in hourly wages after completing training. So that's what is in front of you here. And then we also have 76% of the students reporting being employed after 6 months of completion. And then 38% of the students reported transferring to another college or university. So this really shows you some of the highlights. And so with that said, though, we also saw how do we continue these increases, right? We don't want to just stop here. We can see that we want to continue in meeting our goals as a college and as a district. So next slide, please. What we see here is then some of the leading indicators and what we really focus in on as a college. So in front of you is our fall to spring persistence on the right hand, the first one, and that we saw a decline over our last year. We also saw for our course success rate. So some of the big highlights for us here is that our course success rate has historically been around 70%. We actually saw some minor declines at some point, and then we're back up to that right around that same point. And we have a goal set for 78%. So something that we really noted to ourselves and in this journey is that, again, students are attempting those units that I showed you on the very first slide. And what we do know is if the students don't persist from fall to spring, or if they don't go ahead and they successfully complete those courses, then that's upon us as a college to figure out. And if they are able to do those things, we know that we'll see increases in those number of certificates and the number of degrees. So therefore, we really focus on these as leading indicators to us. We can see persistent equity gaps that exist within inside here. And one of the highlights for us is that what do we do as a college in ensuring that we close these equity gaps from the overall rate of 68.6%. we can see students identified as Black African American was 62.1%. So one of the biggest projects that we had this year that we launched in spring is our Teaching Matters workshop that is led by faculty. And what it really is looking from within in pairs. There's 9 hours of training that faculty members will go through, and they will hold their own community of practice with full-time and part-time faculty members. And I'm just going to read off some of the disciplines. This is really a thing to think about from guided pathways as well, of integrating across and looking at our schools. So the disciplines participating in this, faculty members in pairs that are doing the training, they will be holding their own Teaching Matters workshop with their own faculty in their discipline in fall. Those are accounting, biology, counseling, early childhood education, economics, history, sociology, and psychology. So I think that's really a big highlight about looking at course success rate, and then really looking for, culturally responsive pedagogy and curriculum and redesigning it. So they're able to get together and discuss those strategies that work in closing, and looking at their own personal equity data as well. So next slide, please. So what does this all mean for Moreno Valley College in our next step? So, and highlight some of the other things that we're able to do. So something at the core and center of the work that we did over this last year is we're looking is that you see a Roxanne story on there. And I just want to point out that Roxanne is an adult learner and participated in surveys through this pandemic. And what we saw is that the technology barriers that exist when you read that story, and what we need to do and focus, and we have a wide range, right? We have younger students as well that are first out, but we also have adult learners. And some of the things is, how do we ensure that we remove those barriers and get Roxanne back? And you can tell she wants to be in school clearly by the story in front of you. So some of those big notes that we've been able to do, and one of the biggest ones is through our guided pathways framework, and adopting it, is the launching of virtual engagement centers. And that will definitely make that connection, which as I have student success teams which include classified professionals, administrators, and also faculty and students as well. That is just a great highlight that I wanted to point out of some of the big ones. Some of the other ones too, in our strategic enrollment management, we know that when we look at more recent data for our college, that we want to ensure that we meet our goals and targets, ensure students like Roxanne stay in school and don't leave and don't come back. So some of the big things there is there's key marketing things that we've had. There's been targeted calls and text messaging that have occurred inside that plan. There's also just enhanced, you belong. We have a hashtag that was created by looking at some of these databases and coming out with ways to make students realize that they are with us and we hear for them. So those are just some key ones that came out of this. And then you've heard about our distance education den, the faculty driven and led. I think what's important with that one is that was in response to accreditation that was born. That's a longstanding professional development that can be held out for our college. And another big point of the work that is there is the faculty are now making videos that students can review before. And so I just got to definitely applaud the faculty for putting it together and leading that work. And then of course, the most important thing for us is our own equity and ensuring that closing those gaps like we talked about. And we see, I already mentioned the Teaching Matters workshop, so I won't go into details on that one, but then also we have continued work with our racial justice and culturally sustaining college. Some of the big ones is the committee that was formed over this last year. And we're also part of the Equity Leadership Alliance. So thank you for your time today. And then I am now passing it along to my colleague. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake. I'm happy to highlight tonight Norco College's strategic planning highlights and our areas of focus. We'll start with our successes. Our 1920 headcount exceeded our 24-25 targets, but we've seen a decline this last year due to the pandemic. So we are reconnecting with our past students and supporting new students through the matriculation process to expand access. We are very proud that in the area of transfer math and English completion in the first year, we have closed the equity gap for Latinx students by 40% and meeting our 24-25 target in the process. And the equity gap is also completely closed for African-American and Black students in both certificate completion and in transfer math and English completion in the first year. For our LGBTQ plus students, we have similarly already met our 24-25 target for certificate completion, and we have completely closed the equity gap for transfer volume within the student subpopulation. The certificate completion equity gap is also completely closed for our foster youth students. And our dual enrollment success rates, led by Dr. Kenesha Tarrant and Dr. Maureen Sinclair, continues to consistently exceed the Norco College average, 83.3% and 70.1% respectively. Those super smart high schoolers give me hope. And of course, behind every percentage is a person. Let me introduce you to Madeline Torres. She graduated from Eleanor Roosevelt High School in Eastvale, and she's graduating this spring from CSU Fullerton with a bachelor's degree in political science, a year and a half early through the dual enrollment program established there years ago, saving her and her family time and money. Next slide, please. And looking at students that have completed an award, that's what the state chancellor's office approved certificate or degree within 4 years, our completion rate increased from 9.8 to 13.8. That represents a 40% increase in completion. And if we expand that definition of completion to include the students that earned an award or transferred to a four-year institution, knowing that some students will transfer a few units shy of completing their degree, then our completion has increased from 14.6 to 17.9%. That represents a 22.6% increase in our completion rates. And very notably are the significant gains we are experiencing in the completion of our Black students whose four-year award or transfer rate now exceeds the Norco College all-student average by nearly a full percentage point. And in alignment with the aforementioned district KPIs, the median annual earnings of all Norco College graduates has exceeded our 3% annual target. And when they are contacted after graduation, our CTE certificate completers experience a 45% increase in hourly wages, to which they attribute the skills and industry credentials they earned while at the college. But of course, we remain paranoid of complacency at Norco College. So we have some areas of focus that we want to work on in alignment with the district KPIs to help increase the RCCD high school capture rate. We have already created a very focused work group. We've mailed acceptance letters to every Corona Norco USD senior. We're holding a tactical planning meeting with every high school principal, and we're leveraging the presence of our upward bound programs at local high schools, and we're developing a targeted direct mail campaign to applicants that have not yet enrolled. To increase the number of awards that have completed, we have the full scaling of our guided pathways underway, and led by the Academic Senate, we are prioritizing the expansion of low-cost and zero-cost textbooks. Our Engagement Center team is diving in the deep end with our new student information system anthology REACH, which will develop targeted student communication and support systems to key student groups. To increase the number of certificates completed, we have a faculty data analysis team that is looking at program-specific student completion data. And in partnership with Arupa Valley Unified School District, their students will be bused to Norco College next year to take CTE courses in their designated pathways at Norco College. We're providing targeted outreach support for learners within 1 to 2 courses of graduation to ensure that they register in the correct courses so that they can finish strong this summer or fall. Next, to decrease the equity gap for Latinx students in degree completion, we have, of course, our guided pathways and engagement center efforts, but our faculty have also established a new ESL website and a self-placement tool that has been launched. We're also targeting grants and resource development efforts specifically towards minority and Hispanic populations, as we are both a Hispanic and minority serving institution. To increase the number of students who complete transfer level math and English in their first year, in addition to the Summer Math Institute, as the Chancellor mentioned, we've been very intentional to increase our DEI programming, our Phoenix Scholar programming for our foster youth students, and our Men of Color Scholars Initiative, which has superb enhanced programming to support each of these student subgroups. And lastly on this slide, to decrease the equity gap for our LGBTQ+ students. It's one of our 5 targeted populations in our educational master plan, as you know. We are having transfer level math and English completion in their first year and expanding the staffing hours in our Unity Zone. Our Academic Senate Subcommittee has coordinated dedicated LGBTQ+ speaker series, and initiated by President Green, Norco College sponsored the California Community College LGBTQ+ Summit earlier this year with dedicated faculty professional development. Next slide, please. And of course, these are just the highlights, right? They gave me 4 slides, 4 minutes, and I had a lot of coffee. So thank you for accepting the fast rate of speech. But these are some of the summaries that are going on, including an increase in dual enrollment, increasing our data coaching, which is led by Dr. Greg Aycock to support our data interpretation and data literacy in support of program review, along with an integrated equity student dashboards. We have college-wide engagement in both the RCCD call to action and our Norco College Racial Justice Task Force. Goal 4 of our educational master plan is focused on expanding professional development with a focus on guided pathways and equity. And currently we have a comprehensive 42-point tactical enrollment management plan with new marketing campaigns underway to increase our headcount in FTS. We are growing our apprenticeship programs, both with another large trade union is looking to partner with us, as you know, as their LEA. And our new governance structure is ready to launch this fall with our scarce human teams galvanized intentionally towards our 15 key performance indicators. Under the relentless leadership of Dr. Sam Lee and Dr. Peggy Campo, our military articulation platform continues to lead statewide efforts in military credit for prior learning. And all of this is underscored by a constant focus on community engagement and community communication. And like I said, these are just the highlights, but my time is short, so I will happily hand the podium off to my colleague from RCC, Vice President Emo.
Thank you, both Dean Kavari and Dr. Fleming. Between some of the things we're having with RCC, between 16-17 and 17-18, we realized a 3.2% increase in enrollment. And between 17-18 and 18-19, we realized a 2.3% increase. And these targets are on top of the 3% that we already set. Our dual enrollment student target was 450 students in 19-20, and RCC realized 908 students enrolled. And our college promise students increased by 2.5%, and the target is 2% from 18-19 to 19-20. Next slide, please. So with regards to the RCC strategic planning successes, we realized an increase of 51.7% in ADTs awarded. That is phenomenal. Between 18-19 and 19-20, which is the focus of our guided pathways framework. RCC transfer volume is reflective of our focus. In 19-20, students reported earning $13.33 to $15 per hour prior to when they first started their training at RCC. And after they were done, they realized a $21.50 to $25 per hour as a result of our RCC training. That's a 40% increase. That's something to be super proud about. Our course success rates by race and ethnicity have, for the most part, remained stable. We have some things that we have some strategies that we want to implement. We'll talk about that in just a second. The students are completing transfer level English and math in the first year continue to be our focus, like our sister colleges, and our target is a 20% annual increase. Next slide, please. So this slide is a little small, so we're going to kind of go through this a little bit and see if I can't just synopsize. So the first column here is the increased percentage of students eligible for financial aid, and we want to increase that by 2% annually. So we're hopeful that the new ERP system will help us drill down into data so that we can continue to ensure all eligible students are receiving financial benefits. We're expanding how College Promise works so that we can help remove barriers and ensure students have access and ensure success. The next column is increase high school students participating in dual enrollment by 5% annually. And our numbers for 2020, 2021 are smaller than our established targets. However, we have identified new and innovative strategies in scheduling to expand our offerings in more efficient and effective fashions. COVID helped us realize this, and we have opportunities to braid our offerings so that students throughout our college boundaries can take college courses and reduce their time to completion. We have a new Associate Dean of Educational Partnerships, Dr. Adrian Grayson, who is focused on building our K-12 partnerships to promote existing pathways and to identify new ones to help meet the needs of transfer, workforce preparation, and to promote social and economic mobility. The third column is increased 20% annually the number of students who acquire associate degrees, credentials, certificates, or job-specific skill sets. So with our guided pathways framework at the forefront of everything we do, we continue to clarify the path for our students, especially in those fields that are aligned with high wage employment. Additionally, the ADTs and state-approved certificates are really the measurements that we want to focus on. As we clarify the path, we are really trying to encourage students to focus on the one degree because we know in the past they've always been eligible for multiple. And did you know that Cal State University San Bernardino is currently our #1 transfer institution? UCR is at a close second, and Cal Baptist is our third highest transfer school. The next column says increase the number of students completing transfer level math and English in the first year by 20%. As you know, we are focused on the Math Summer Institute, and we are looking forward to the outcomes of this pilot program and how we might scale it up moving forward. Our English faculty have been key in integrating cultural proficiency in all that they do. It is amazing to watch how every single faculty member is engaged and also leads discussions. Moving forward, they are focused on expanding this work to also be cross-discipline. And our AB 705 work continues, and we hope with all of this work that we're doing that we'll be able to realize more significant changes. The next column is shorten the time to completion for part-time students from 6 to 4 years and for full-time students from 6 to 3. While we realize and recognize that in any given pathway, only 50 to 60% of the students have received a student educational plan, we have shown some improvement in 2020, 2021. However, we have some very targeted approaches moving forward, and they include inescapable support for our students from the time they apply to the time they graduate, knowing that each student may need different support on their journey, and we are ready to meet these needs. We believe a more solid caseload model with our counselors will help us increase the SEPs in all pathways. Additionally, we are focused on career coaching and a robust onboarding program. And our focus is going to be on course success strategies, including data coaching and course level analysis that will help us realize increased success rates by race and ethnicity. Next slide, please. So what are the ongoing work? So again, math and English support courses aligned with AB 705 work. We're intentionally targeting that inescapable support for our students, including peer support and student success teams by Pathway. We're doing continued with the data coaching and leading from the middle with additional data analysis and cultural proficiency and cultural relevant pedagogy. We have our student equity committee, which is focused on, right now, we're focused on our equity audit. All 3 colleges are conducting the equity audit. We've also been working with HOTEP consultants to lead a lot of our discussions with our student equity committee, especially aligned with specific focus training. We're expanding our professional and faculty development aligned with our PRT recommendations. We have the new website and marketing campaigns that are happening all the time. We're data-driven and strategic plan aligned decision-making. What's really nice is you'll sit in a meeting and the first thing people will ask is, I'm sorry, is this in your program review? Is this aligned with the strategic plan? So that must mean that we're doing something right. And we continue to focus on fostering the relationships in our community. And when our college campuses open back up, we have received a full-size bronze tiger that has been donated by Mr. and Mrs. Robert Geddes. And so we look forward to putting that in our library. And we look forward to welcoming you all to come and see it once it's there. So with that, I thank you very much. And we open it for questions.
All right, questions or comments from the board members? A lot of information.
Yes, I just have one fast question. This may be more applicable to Dr. Fleming and Norco. Oh, there you go. Dr. Fleming. So, hello? God. Okay, you provided wonderful information, all of you did. And you included quite a bit about the high school program that we have and the success measured. My question is anyone from the college going to the Corona Norco school board meetings and updating their board? It would be, I think, very much worth our while to have somebody on some sort of semi-regular basis, maybe every 6 months or whatever, sharing with them these terrific facts and outcomes. So if that's not happening, I would encourage someone to give up their Tuesday evening to go update them once every 6 months or so.
Happy to defer to President Green, but I know she has done, and it's on a schedule, but we love to take the pony show on the road and make sure all of our districts, especially Corona Norco USD, is aware. And so we'd be happy to collaborate and to do that. Thank you.
Those programs are so outstanding. I think the chambers would be interested, probably Harupa Unified as well, and Alvord. You know, this is a case where we're really being very successful. And if we don't tell them, they won't know.
Our Achilles heel, I think, as a college and sometimes as a district, is we don't brag appropriately enough when we hit it out of the ballpark.
Well, and all of you have provided information that we should be trumpeting out. But
thank you.
Anyway, that would certainly be, I know it sounds like you have great relations with the school sites. I would backfill that to the board because they have influence in the community and they don't always know the great things that you're doing. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Well received.
Additional questions?
Trustee Clark, go ahead.
No, just a comment just to close out. Super excited about the strategic plan, kind of where we're going to. This really is our framework I know we've been presenting some of our information at the state level and sharing, the great work that's been going on. I want to thank our chancellor and board president Figueroa for joining us in those conversations. We actually are the great recipients of the work that all of you are doing, quite frankly, and we get to be able to tell what all you are doing throughout the state. And we get lots of feedback. And I just want to thank all of you and congratulate you on your great work. It was great to see so many of the goals that you all set actually come out much higher, even in some difficult times. And I know we had a conversation a few years ago when we first saw some of the goals, and we were kind of pushing you to raise those goals up, raise that bar up a little bit higher, and you exceeded those goal numbers. And so congratulations. And with that, this is just an informational item. Doesn't need to come back, correct?
Yeah. Do we have any other questions? Just a comment.
Okay.
So, Dr. Esoff, I think that Trustee Hedrick's comment needs to be probably emphasized. We met with the boards of some of these districts. But the one thing that stood out for us during the time that we met with them was the fact that they did not know a lot of the resources that we had availed to them, and they did not really know some of the results of what was happening with some of their students that we were now servicing. And so I think that what Trustee Hedrick's comment, even though it was directed at Norco, I think that that's something that should be done with all of them, because some of the numbers that I saw coming out of Riverside, I mean, those are phenomenal. And then the numbers that came out of Moreno Valley, I mean, especially given Moreno Valley's challenges, and we are, like Riverside, there are other higher institutions around, but Moreno Valley, it's like, we're it. We are it for them. Their hope is like right there on that campus. And so I think that if we can make sure that we're out there telling Moreno Valley leadership, look at what's happening with some of the resources that you are receiving from the district, that's going to be critical, because when we met with them, the majority of them did not know that. They were basically not well versed on what it was that we were working with, and even that we were partnering with them on some issues. So I think that that needs to be clarified. So definitely take what Trustee Hedrick indicated to all the other ones.
And actually, President Figueroa and Vice President Hedrick, something you might want to really think about all of us doing is actually going out to our respective school districts and actually having that communication, bringing a staff member and one of us going alongside. I don't think we'll probably have a joint meeting right now. I know there's plans for one in the future. They all love the joint meetings when we have them, but this has been an unusual year. Staffs are working, around the clock to be able to provide the services and be able to pivot when necessary. And I think everybody's done a great job with that. But I think we could easily structure a program to be able to go out, give them that information. I think they would really, really welcome that from all of us. Vice President Hedrick.
Yes, I think that's a great idea. I would love to join you at a CNUSD board meeting, my old home. And so I think that that's a wonderful thing. The other thing is Chris Clark, or the people who are doing our publicity at the individual colleges. The statistics that you all put out are perfect for memes to go viral about our success, and particularly interested in the when we've been able to either substantially or completely close achievement gaps. That should get noticed, because that's better than the K-12s have managed to do. So you have great things to brag about, and I would love to go to a meeting with you and either listen or play Vanna White to your presentation.
Present.
If I may, if you come with us, you will be speaking as well. We invite you to so we use that leverage and co-present, please. Absolutely.
I will greet them.
Quick question, another quick question.
Sure.
On the Moreno Valley College information that David Torres was presenting, how far can that information be aggregated to actually get more individual data on what the numbers are looking like? I mean, the numbers were great, but I'm trying to figure out like, where are they coming from?
I'm sorry, you're asking the question, how
So the
deep can we go
numbers
down?
From the charts that you were giving
Mhm.
and the success rates that, we were showing,
Mhm.
how far can we display that information? How far can we bring it into populations?
I mean, we can disaggregate this data by different populations, as you've seen. We can disaggregate it by the schools, school districts, zip codes. I
Really?
mean, we can cut this
Mhm.
data a lot of different
much
ways.
so.
That's why so much of our data
By
always
the
comes,
schools and the districts? Well, the districts I know,
Mhm.
but by the schools?
oftentimes,
By zip
yes.
code.
Oftentimes, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, it's just a question of how you want to cut this data, because there's so much data there that you don't want to be accused of like dumping all this data on you. So it has to be meaningful. But yeah, there's all kinds of ways to cut this.
Oh, you
And,
have
and
no
that could be a
idea
really
what door
important
you opened.
conversation, especially to
Mhm.
be able to share what's happening by high school
Mhm.
population too, kind of like, who are the students that are actually coming and how well are they doing?
Mhm.
And with that closure of the achievement gap.
Yeah, because if you can make it personal to them,
Mhm.
then all of a sudden it becomes something that they can identify with, and then they can really end up saying, okay,
Yes.
great.
And it sends out a
Thank
new
you.
message to our, I think, the counseling staff too at the high schools, because a lot of times I think they really push for that 4-year program versus pushing for the 2-year that so many of our students end up going to anyways, but they really do push for that high achievement of the 4 years. That's a big countywide push to be able to apply to do your FAFSA for the 4-year completion and not for the 2-year program.
Wow. Thank you, thank
Mhm.
you.
I think we'll continue to work with the college presidents and the superintendents of the school districts to see to it that we are on their agenda twice a year, so we can give very specific information in terms of what is ongoing with their own students, so that they can clearly see what's happening within their own student populations.
It'd be
This
awesome.
will not replace the joint board meetings that we've initiated. It's just that the pandemic
Mm.
has not allowed us to do that, but we will continue to meet with each of the board-to-board meetings, which I think is also fundamentally important.
I think the other thing that might be important to President Figueroa is for us to maybe consider sharing this information when Trustee Alcala and I are with the School Board Association here in Riverside, right? I think this would be a presentation piece that we can maybe kind of hone down by each of the different school districts to be able to share that. It's just another way that we have changed the delivery of our services and are very goal-centered for our students. Great. Well, thank you everybody for your presentation this evening. We appreciate your time and all your work and efforts
Thank
on
you.
this. Our next item this evening is going to be presented by Dr. Kim. If hopefully she's still online for our teaching and learning proposed curricular changes. Dr. Kim.
Yes, good evening again. So the first set of proposed curricular changes is in terms of our nursing program with a course deletion for Nursing 91, which is no longer viable and has not been offered since winter of 2012. Course exclusions include English 85, which is being excluded to decrease the cost to the student, and a non-credit version provides students assistance in the same topic area. And we have the Interdisciplinary Studies 1 introduction to tutoring has never been offered, and no plans are in place to actually offer it in the future, and that too is being requested to be excluded. The course inclusion is our African American History 1, which will be offered at Norco College, and we were not able to submit it at the same time when Moreno Valley and Riverside's proposed course for this went through, and so it's coming forward for Norco College at this time. The Bio 9, the course major modifications. The first one is Bio 9, which is requesting to increase lecture hours from 36 to 54 hours to appropriately convey course content and to allow for transferability as a life science with lab to the CSUs and UCs. And the course objectives have been updated accordingly for that purpose. For the following CMI courses, the community interpretation courses 61, 71, 81, and 91 are being updated for objectives as well as textbooks. And the 2 engineering technology courses, these are just name change onlys from the the blueprint reading to print reading. The new course is in a introduction to social justice studies. Will actually have an agenda item in the next set for the discipline. This social justice studies course at Norco College is the introduction for the discipline. The next set here is the new discipline, the social justice studies, which is an intersection of discrimination and oppression and explores the inequities and the interconnected systems of discrimination and oppression, including institutional, relational, cultural, and socioeconomic, racism, sexism, atheism, classism, heterosexism, and cisgenderism. The goal of the program is not to engender a singular approach to social justice issues, but rather to present students with a dynamic academic framework for thinking creatively and pragmatically about contemporary social issues. And this is currently being offered at Norco as new discipline with plans in and motion to be able to also offer the same at Moreno Valley and Riverside in a future request. The new program for the ADT transfer is in Business Administration 2.0. These are just being realigned, and this is for Norco and Riverside to meet with the transfer model curriculum template that the Chancellor's Office has provided. The new degree program in Computer Information Systems is for Moreno Valley College in cybersecurity, which is absolutely apropos at this time, given the current societal needs. And then the last is the program modification for computer data technology, which is removing CATSYS 84, which was a course for WordPerfect for Windows. And that concludes this batch, but I also have a second batch to review as well. So if we can go to the next, okay, thank you. The next set is for course exclusions for older adult courses and for seniors that were previously offered and are now being requested to be removed from the college inventory as they have not been taught in many years. The course major modification is for the cosmetology program, remedial training course, and it's to provide students with the assessment and the lecture requirements needed in order for them to complete their Section F, Article 12, Health and Safety Laws and Regulations to fulfill their state board for barbering and cosmetology. The new courses are all in applied digital media, and these are geared towards those individuals that are focused on short-term vocational training and entrepreneurial activities. And so the topics are design process for graphic design, Adobe Illustrator for graphic design, Adobe Photoshop, and promotional printing. And then the last is in terms of a non-credit certificate program, also in the applied digital media, and that's what those 4 courses above would be applied towards, and it is the graphic design and promotional printing entrepreneur non-credit certificate program. And all of these, of course, were for Riverside City College. And that concludes my report.
Thank you so much. Are there questions from committee members or from our trustees? President Figueroa.
Yes, question. On the African American course that is only currently being offered at Norco now, when is the anticipation for that course to be at Riverside and Moreno Valley?
Oh, Riverside and Moreno Valley was passed already. that came before you in a previous proposed curricular change, and this is now coming forward.
Well, this is catching up on.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Any other questions? With that, we'll bring these items back for approval. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Kim. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, President Figueroa.
All right, so that moves us into advancement and partnerships. And this goes to Vice President Hendrick.
Yes, thank you very much. The first item relates to the a naming recommendation. And I would like to ask Vice Chancellor Goldware to please speak to the item.
Thank you. I'm actually going to ask Executive Director Alana Wilson to come up, and a brief presentation will follow thereafter. Lana.
Good evening, trustees, chancellor, district and college leadership. The RCCD Board Policy 4400 governs the naming of facilities, events, and programs. Namings may be honorary in cases of significant personal contributions of someone closely associated with the district. They may also be philanthropic in recognition of a significant charitable gift made through the RCCD Foundation. The Facilities Recognition and Naming Committee takes on the task of evaluating all naming nominations and makes recommendations to the chancellor. The Board of Trustees has the final authority to approve such namings and makes its decision based on the chancellor's recommendation. The Facilities Naming Committee has received an honorary nomination to name the RCC Black Box Theater in honor of Gary Dean Schultz. The nomination was submitted by RCC theater professor Jody Julian with support from the department faculty as well as the Faculty Association. I'd like to acknowledge and commend the committee for their work in reviewing and discussing the nomination. And the committee ultimately voted to recommend that the Board of Trustees approve this honorary naming. Professor Julian is with us to provide some additional background and context for the nomination. So with that, I will turn the mic over to her.
Good evening, Madam President, Board of Trustees, Dr. Isak, invited guests and administrators. Gary Dean Schultz was born on August 4th, 1937, and he grew up in Riverside. Next slide. He graduated in 1955, next slide, from Riverside Poly High School, attended Riverside College, and received a BA in English and teaching credential from Fresno State University in 1960. Next slide. And thus began his lifelong journey in theater education. Gary's first teaching experience came in the Fresno Unified School District and then with the Santa Ana Unified School District for several years before returning to the Inland Empire. He taught theater at Rubidoux High School and in the Jurupa Unified School District and later served on their Board of Education. In 1965, this is all still pre my birth. After joining the performing arts faculty at RCC, Gary's love of theater was inspiration for completing an MFA in directing at UCR. Many Riversiders still remember the outdoor summer theater program Gary spearheaded as he happily handed turkey legs from the snack bar window. Slides 4 and 5. They're a little bit out of order. In 1977, in addition to his duties at the college, Gary became the entertainment director at the Mission Inn. And in the fall of that year, started the Mission Inn Dinner Theater, next slide, which successfully ran for 6 seasons. At the invitation of RCC President Chuck Kane, Gary brought staff from the dinner theater and established Riverside Civic Light Opera. Next slide. You can see outside of Landis Amphitheater currently where the Stover building is. These are slides where they used to hold shows outside. With the production of South Pacific starring Dorothy Lamour, next slide, Landis Performing Arts Center was born, and Performance Riverside began a concert series and big band series and became the what we know as Performance Riverside. Next slide. Today, here's a picture of the Landis lobby, again pre my birth in 1956. Another picture of Dorothy Lamour. Next slide. Keep going. Next slide. Thank you. During his sabbaticals and summer breaks, Gary studied with and assisted Jerry Grotowski in Wrocław, Poland, at his Actors Institute Laboratory Theater, and Jerry Turner at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival in Ashland. His tenure at OSF led him to move that beautiful location after his retirement. He loved RCC, the program he had tirelessly built and truly loved and drove his students. He had lasting impact on thousands of lives that to this day remember their experiences at RC with fondness. Here are some shows and some of my favorites. This was one of his favorite productions of Evita. Next, when it was RCLO, The King and I, Peter Pan and Jesus Christ Superstar. And the last slide that I will show you today is the show that I started in as Glinda the Good Witch in The Wizard of Oz, and was the jumpstart to my career as a graduate student at Cal State Fullerton and then UCLA. In addition to the hundreds of young actors and technicians who got their start in Gary's theaters, Gary's family legacy, his three sons, Jason, Peter, married to Tracy, Garth, who's married to Marie, of Riverside. Gary was and would be very, very proud of his 5 grandchildren, Zachary, Ryan, and Evan, who belong to Pete and Tracy, and Samuel and Haley Marie, who belong to Garth and Marie. Gary Dean Schultz, next slide, please, is remembered as Riverside Theater innovator, a champion of the arts, an idea man, a creator of theater who brashly drove, and with that term I mean brash, forward to create and educate when others could not see the path. His artistic legacy is his gift to Riverside and her students. And that concludes my presentation. Questions? Comments?
Are there any comments or questions from the board? Trustee Blumenthal.
Yes, I would like to make a comment. Many years, decades ago, when I was an adjunct professor at RCC, and I came to teach during the time that Dr. Dina Stallings was on sabbatical. And I became the assistant speech coach. Gary Schultz not only did performing arts, but he also helped to coach the speech team with speech and debate and some of the theater things that were there for the speech tournaments. I became friends with Gary probably 1972. And
I was born then. It's okay.
That's the only reason I gave that date. And we maintained a friendship throughout. His wife was incredible, who was also a professor at RCC. And he then left part of the speech program and went to the performing arts. And I can't think of a better honor or anyone better to name this after than Gary Schultz.
That's great. Thank you.
Bravo.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from the board? Sounds like a wonderful recommendation.
Thank you
and
so
we
much.
look forward to seeing it on our agenda at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and the next item is the resolution 78-2021 in support of LGBTQ students and support of Pride Month. Vice Chancellor Goldbar.
Thank you, Trustee Hedrick. Before you this evening is a resolution for your consideration This resolution, observing June as Pride Month, affirms the rights and freedoms for those in the LGBTQ plus community. RCCD colleges and the district office proudly celebrate the LGBT plus community, and that can be seen through a number of efforts across the district and the colleges. Specifically, the diversity, equity, inclusion committees at each, the ally program and the trainings, and our colleges proudly sponsor the California Community College LGBTQIA plus Summit, an event organized by faculty, staff, and students throughout the college system. You also heard from Dr. Fleming in some of the progress that Norco College has made in closing the gap, and RCC and MBC also hosted their first Lavender graduation virtual ceremony, a symbolic event celebrating this community, the students, and their academic achievements. RCCD's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion remain at the forefront of our mission. Our colleges offer a place to learn, dream, love, unite, and be proud of who you are. The resolution is before you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Vice Chancellor Goldware?
No questions, but a comment. I really like the way that the whereas is included each of the colleges and what each of the colleges is doing for this particular population. So that was really nice. I enjoyed that part of it.
It's where the work happens.
Yep.
Thank you. And we look forward to acting on this at our next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. President Figueroa.
All right, thank you, Vice President Hedrick. And so now we move on to the last committee report, which is resources. And this goes to our secretary, Trustee Alcala.
All right. So our first presentation from the Resource Committee will be the Project Nexus ERP implementation update. And I believe this one is Dr. Kim.
Vice Chancellor Blackmore.
Surprise.
Anyway, Associate Vice Chancellor Blackmore.
I apologize. I went by what's on my.
No worries. No worries. It's fine. Madam President, trustees, Dr. Isaac, I can't talk. Dr. Isak. Okay, so tonight I'm going to give you guys a brief update on Project Nexus, which is our ERP implementation. And I'm going to apologize in advance because I'm going to use some IT talk. And I know how that goes over sometimes, and I will do my best to explain it all and kind of lay it out as I go through it. But I am going to apologize in advance. So please bear with me a little. Next slide, please. So a little background. So RCCD selected the Campus Nexus suite of applications from Anthology, which is a company that makes higher education enterprise resource planning software in the spring of 2020. The scope of that project was a replacement for all of RCC's current student information system. So when I say student information system or SIS, what I'm referring to is that kind of core piece of our academic systems. And that's stuff like it does academic scheduling. It's where we do financial aid. It's where we store academic records. And that system was going to be a replacement for what we are currently using today, which is Lucian Colleague. So we also are replacing the functionality of the human resource and the finance functions which exist in Lucian Colleague today. And we are also added a piece on what is called a customer relationship management or CRM functionality. And that is a piece of software that actually manages the engagement and tracks the engagement between students, in our case, and our institutions. So it allows us to manage a student's life cycle, allows us to reach out, communicate via text message, email. It allows us to assign tasks for phone calls and those types of things. So this ERP project was launched, the implementation project was launched in the summer of 2020. Next slide, please. Just a little bit of additional information about our vendor. So the company that we call Anthology today, at the time we actually signed the contract, it was known as Campus Management. And Anthology was actually formed via a merger of Campus Management, Campus Labs, and iModules in June of 2020, right after we signed this contract. So they actually became a much bigger higher ed software maker and manufacturer. Anthology also went through a little bit of a rebranding while we've been doing this project. So what we knew as Campus Nexus Student is now known as Anthology Student.
What we called Campus Nexus Engage, which is the CRM functionality, is now known as Anthology Reach. And Campus Nexus HR Finance became Anthology Finance and Human Capital Management, or HCM. Next slide, please. The progress to date. So we kicked off this project with what is called a series of business process analysis. And that's where we meet with the vendor. The vendor comes in, they go through basically a scoping exercise where they look at how we do everything. What does our process look like? And they map that. And so those processes were for the student on the student side were completed in the fall of 2020. On the reach side, which is the admissions piece, the outreach, all those types of things, that was completed in the fall of 2020 as well. And on the with the finance and HCM piece, we completed that work in the late winter of 2020 and actually into the early winter of 2021. Next slide, please. So continued progress. All right. So on the Anthology student side, so we have we've gone through our first data extracts out of our current system colleague, and we delivered a limited set of data to the vendor in April of 2021. On the curriculum academic scheduling piece, we are still undergoing a requirements gathering. So we have some additional sessions with the vendor to go through and try and flesh out those requirements, make sure that we are going to fully meet what RCCD needs the new system to do. And I have to give a shout out to Dr. DeMemo, because she has actually led a core team of functional users and gotten together with that group and met with the vendor to make sure that we are capturing every detail that we need to be successful with this new system. So I have to give her a big shout out. Thank you. We are also looking at all of our third-party integrations. So we have a series of ancillary systems that we need to use for certain functionality that's not included in the core system. Those are our third-party, and they have to integrate with our current system. We have to bring data in and out and those types of things. So we have some requirement gathering sessions going on with that. My technical teams meet with the vendor on a regular basis, on a weekly basis, and we go through and finalize those specifications to make sure that as we get ready to stand up the new systems, the things that we're continuing to use, stuff like 25 Live, which does facilities scheduling and those types of things, all will talk to the new system. So we have those ongoing sessions. Just as a kind of a side note there, one of the goals of this project was when we started this, we had actually 60 different systems that communicated with our current ERP system. The goal is actually to drive that down to about 20 when we complete this project. So we're trying to de-scope quite a bit. Next slide, please. On the finance side, so we are still going some additional scoping sessions on the finance side, and those sessions are dealing primarily with the County Office of Ed's Galaxy product, which we use for on our finance side here, and how to figure out how to make that integrate and work with the new system. So those sessions are still undergoing. With Anthology Reach, which again is that CRM functionality, which is a new piece to the district, we have divided that up into phases. So phase one, which was what we call student prospecting and outreach. We've gone through the training of that. So all of our functional leads and RCC trainers have completed the training. Our user acceptance testing has been completed. So they have actually gone through, made sure everything worked. We've done training for our general users, and our system administrators have been fully trained. Now, I'm happy to report that phase one went live actually on the week of May 24th. So that system is operational. Students can submit RFI forms to the colleges. Those forms are tracked. They get automated communication responses, and we were able to actually manage that communication channels with those students to make sure that we are engaging them accordingly and bringing them into our institutions. Next slide, please. So there's a second phase to the Reach product, and that will include the application processing and the student success pieces, and also a case management aspect. Okay, so we have some data mapping sessions going on with the vendor currently, where we get together and say, okay, what data we need to make sure is in our CRM system to make sure we can appropriately track students and monitor them accordingly and have those appropriate interactions. We have established a timeline for that piece of it. We've also gone through we have a functional core team that is dealing with the vendor. Again, very much in the model of what Dr. DeMemo organized on the student side. We are having our kickoff actually next week for that to get going with that. And the scheduled go live is late October, early November of 2021 for that piece of the Reach implementation. Next slide, please. This project has not been without challenges. So I will tell you, any project of this scope and scale, we've had some issues. And to be perfectly transparent, the getting data out of our old system has been a real challenge. That stems from a lot of different issues. We have some issues with technology obsolescence that are causing us some challenge. There's been some data validity issues. We've found areas where we've had the wrong data in the wrong field, and it creates some problems as we try to migrate that out. And that has slowed our progress quite a bit. and it required us to bring in additional resources to manage that. We've also found out that, RCC is very complex when it comes to our curriculum and academic scheduling. And that has forced us to go back and revisit that and go through our process to make sure that we are capturing those requirements, that we are digging in, and that vendor can meet our needs. So that has been an ongoing challenge, and we've invested additional time and resources to make sure we get that right. We've had some issues around with the integration piece, especially when it comes to the Galaxy aspect of it. How are we going to make that work, and how do we integrate that with a new system? Again, we are managing that, and we are making progress on that area. We've also had some issues with what we call scope creep, or changing scope. There's been some additional requirements as we've gone through this process. People have asked us, hey, can we include this in the project? Or, hey, we need to do this while we're at it. And so we've had some scope creep. So that's led to some additional resources being needed and added some time to this project. Again, just as we've gone through it, we found other things. So next slide, please. So our original timeline for this project, we had an initial project plan that called for a parallel implementation. We were going to implement the Reach product and the student product at the same time, and we were going to go live with both of those systems in late October of 2021. And then we had a third track, which was the finance and HCM piece, and that was scheduled to go live in December of 2021. Next slide, please. So our initial project plan, we had some assumptions that drove that timeline. Number one was the availability of our RCCD personnel to fully participate in the project. What we found out is, our staff is really busy, and some of the resourcing we needed, we just, people can't do three things. They can't work 25 hours a week or 24 hours a day kind of thing. So we've had to scale back some of those expectations. We thought we could move the data a lot easier than it's turning out to be. So that's, again, like I mentioned before, that's been a real challenge. And a lot of the RCCD business processes could not be accommodated straight out of the box with the software. So we've had to go through and dive deeper into that and manage this more accordingly and make sure that we're getting down that road. So we have some lessons learned. Our staff need additional time to gain familiarity with the new system. It's a completely different. It's a paradigm shift in how it actually operates compared to our old system, which is not a bad thing, but it takes time for our staff to absorb that and become comfortable with the new system. Our data needs a lot of remediation, and that has been a challenge. I've mentioned that at length already. And again, we need some more resources we need the complexity of our time our processes we need to take more time to make sure we manage that accordingly. Next slide, please. So we have a revised timeline, and what we are moving to is a phased approach. So the Anthology Reach product, which is the CRM piece that I mentioned, we are still planning a go live for that in late October, early November, and we're going to deliver that with robust functionality. So it'll include the stuff like the case management aspect of it, so we can assign success teams, those types of things to our students, and manage those student success elements. We're going to have the student lifecycle management. So as soon as a student applies, they'll be welcomed with an email, they'll get text messages, they'll be encouraged to go through the process to make sure they enroll in our institution and progress through all the way through to graduation. To make sure that works, we're going to utilize a temporary data interface with our current ERP system, so we have that data that we need. We are planning the anthology finance piece and the human capital management or HR piece of it for a go live in the spring of 2022. And the anthology student piece, the student information system, will go live in June of 2022. Next slide, please. So there's some advantages to this revised timeline. Number one, we're mitigating some risk. We're minimizing the need to kind of try and stand up parallel systems at the same time, which is a heavy lift for the institution. We can circle back and make sure that we are engaging all of our stakeholders. We are getting that additional input and from across all different groups, and we are kind of gathering our arms around as many people as we can in this process. And we also can deliver training and make sure the training is appropriate and the staff can absorb that at the appropriate rate. We're not trying to overwhelm them with too much training and try to pick up too many new systems too quickly. We can spend some more time on our data, make sure we have system integrity around that data. And we also have a little bit more time to do some end-to-end testing of our MIS state reporting piece. But I do want to emphasize that we are still delivering a lot of the needed functionality very early in the project, with the student lifecycle management coming online in the fall of 2021. Next slide. The one thing I wanted to point out here is we can't lose sight of what the ultimate project goals were. Number one, that's better support the guided pathways. The new system has support for the guided pathways embedded in it and how it's designed and organized. We're going to make way more data, way more available to our faculty and staff at all points. So they will have access to that data, whether it's reports, all of those types of things will be at their fingertips to be able to, use that for student success or whatever the needs are. They will have much greater access to in much more immediate fashion. We're also looking at this as an opportunity to increase our speed and efficiency. So the idea that students, when they put in an application, they'll be able to get through that process where they're actually enrolled into a class much quicker. We'll be able to reach out to students much quicker. We have this ability to be much more agile in how we do business. And also, it's a very modern experience per se compared to what we deliver today. It'll be on a student, faculty, staff, anybody will be able to access this system from a mobile device, from a computer, from a tablet, from anywhere if they have an internet connection. So it'll give us that modern experience that students are asking for, that's faculty, staff, everybody would really like to have. And at the end of the day, this is about improving student success, and that's what this project is all about. And with that, can I answer any questions?
Are there any questions, trustees, committee members?
Just a comment.
Okay.
Well, I'm really excited about the fact that our students will have so much access to being able to follow the system. I think one of the biggest concerns I constantly hear is that just going through the process to be able to enroll, be able to track it, is really like a nightmare. It's like the piece that is so frustrating because you have to wait days. And we've had some, honest presentations by our staff members, to share about those challenges. And so to have a tool like this, I think will be a really helpful element. So thank you. Excited about that part.
Anything else? Thank you, sir. Appreciate you. All right. The next presentation is the Riverside City College Digital Library STEM Engagement Center project. And Mr. Brown, it is Mr. Brown. All right. I got it right this time.
Thank you, Trustee Alcala. Presented for the committee's review and consideration is the RCC Digital Library STEM Engagement Center project. The presenters of this exciting and much needed project are Professor Virginia White, Dean Scott Blair, and Associate Vice Chancellor of Facilities Planning and Development, Hussein Aga. So, Hussein.
Thank you so much, Vice Chancellor Brown, and good evening, Board of Trustees, Chancellor Isak, and the rest of the committee. The Digital Library STEM Engagement Center project is part of the College 2018 Approved Facility Master Plan. It was prioritized by the college, and really we are excited about the project. This project was also discussed and scoped at the visioning session by the college in 2019. For the last few months, Facilities Planning and Development has been working with the college administration and the stakeholder to bring the project for approval before the board. It has gone through several shared governance process and meetings, including a resource committee at Riverside City College, including the District Strategic Planning Council. And I will hand it over to Dr. Anderson to present the project.
Thanks, Hussein. Good evening, Board President Figueroa, members of the board, Chancellor, and members of the community. I think my only job here is to thank the faculty and the STEM administration for their support and engagement in this project, their cooperation with the district office leadership team around our facilities project. This truly is one of those one team efforts. It takes a while to get where we are, but everybody eventually comes together and achieves a really, really good conceptual layout of what we are intending. The reason that this is so important is that
it will become the prototype for all the engagement centers that the college is envisioning. These engagement centers are part, of course, as you know, of our Guided Pathways efforts. They really are an effort to geographically, physically guide our students and get them on the right track. They'll see these engagement centers, they'll work with staff and faculty in the engagement centers, and they will see themselves as filled with self-efficacy and ready to contribute. So it represents the first of an essential and crucial next steps in the full scaling of Guided Pathways at the college. Within the center, students will be met in an inescapable manner with all aspects of student support services, specialized for the division of STEM, specialized for academic achievement in STEM. In one convenient location, we've chosen the digital library, the ground floor of the digital library, because of its proximity, of course, to the STEM building. And it is the work of fulfilling the Guided Pathways 3 and 4 realized as the standard part of the student experience at RCC. So presenting more of the details, we have Dean Blair and Professor White. Thank you.
Good evening. There, we've already gone there. So on this slide, we have our problem, which is that the Math and Science building does not have space to accommodate student engagement. The new digital library STEM Engagement Center will provide interactive student space that will directly support the college's guided pathway goals. The solution to this comes in the RCC Facilities Master Plan that was approved by the Board of Trustees in 2018 and identifies the relocation of technology support services. In the graphic you're seeing here, you're seeing the Gensler group that put together help us do our Facilities Master Plan. We are in the 3 to 4 frame right in there in that progression at the moment. Next slide, please. So a steering committee composed of STEM faculty, related classified professionals and administrators has been assembled. Conceptual planning is underway, which envisions the utilization of the space just described to create a place where students will engage with STEM faculty, counselors, ed advisors, peer mentors, and tutors. Next slide, please. This slide indicates the location of the space available by the relocation of the technology support services within the first floor of the digital library and adjacent to the existing Math and Science building.
The new STEM Engagement Center is designed to support STEM students and enhance the guided pathway goals. And this project will involve reconstructing the lower level of the digital library to provide space for students to study, to interact, and to collaborate with each other. Technology support services will be relocated to a newly renovated area in the Cesar Chavez building, thereby activating 5,886 assignable square feet and 6,594 gross square feet of the digital library. Next slide. The plan is that within this nearly 6,000 square feet that is available, the STEM Engagement Center will offer a wide variety of spaces to be utilized for a number of different activities. As such, it'll be designed to be as flexible as possible to adjust to the needs of the moment. We envision students using the STEM Engagement Center for individual study time, collaborating on group projects for class, participating in club activities, meeting with a counselor or an educational advisor, taking advantage of tutoring or supplemental instruction, meeting with peer mentors, attending workshops or listening to guest lecturers, accessing equipment and models otherwise available only in lab rooms during lab time, and importantly, connecting with each other socially as well. Next slide, please.
The budget and schedule. So the total project budget has been identified in the facility master plan in the initial feasibility study to be $5 million. And that's the Obviously, the total project budget, which includes construction and hard cost of 3.25 plus 1.1 for soft cost and other budgets, which including the furniture, AVIT equipment, and project contingency. As far as the schedule milestone, once the board approves the project, we will start design in August once we get an architect on board. In 21-22 will be the design phase, and then construction will be in 22-23 fiscal year, and we'll have the project open and occupied in the fall of 2023. With that, it concludes the presentation. We'll be happy to answer any question.
Any questions or comments from trustees? Other committee members? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, the next report will be the 2023-2027, wow, 5-year capital construction plan, initial project proposals and final project proposals. Mr. Brown.
Thank you once again. In order for the district to participate in the state capital outlay program, we must complete and submit a 5-year capital construction plan, which includes initial project proposals and final project proposals. Last month, we presented to the Board of Trustees the scoring methodology used by the state for the capital construction plan program. Tonight, Hussein Aga and the College Vice Presidents of Business Services will be here to present the 5-year capital construction plan. Hussein?
Thank you so much, Vice Chancellor Brown, and good evening again. Next slide, please. So every community college district is required to submit its 5-year capital construction plan on annual basis, and that usually during July and August every year. This year's submission is for the 5-year capital construction plan for 2023 through 2027. The 5-year capital construction plan is part of the district integrated planning process and complies with the educational and facilities master plan for our colleges. Part of the plan, we will submit initial and final project proposals to the State Chancellor Office, which is part of the capital outlay funding that is based on competitive scoring, a scoring system throughout the state. Next slide, please. Our planning committee is diverse and includes representatives from each college and the district office. We also engage a third-party planning consultant who helps the district with crunching the numbers and putting the submittal together in a fusion system, which is the state system. And more often, we consult the college's campus architect who help the colleges with the facility master plan and educational master plan. And when it comes to development of the FPP, we engage the college's stakeholder and the user group who will be the final beneficiaries of the project. Next slide, please. This year's submission is due in August 1st, 2021, which I think it's Sunday. That means it's August 2nd. We are using the new scoring metrics, which is the Vision for Success, and we went through this last month at our board, explained the differences and the challenges with that scoring metrics for us. We are limited to 1 FPP per college or site, and there's no limitation for the number of IPPs. Project categories are really fire life safety, growth, and modernization. We don't have any fire life safety project to submit part of the plan, but we will have mainly growth and modernization. The district is required to have or include minimum 25% local contribution of the total project budget for every single FPP, and that's required requirement by the Department of Finance and the State Chancellor Office. Finally, all the furniture and equipment or major equipment within the FPP need to be locally funded. Next slide, please. Our guiding principle for prioritizing the 5-year capital construction plan as follows. We usually start the planning process in December, January, and the process takes about 6 months with our planning committee. This year we started off with revisiting the status of 2020 FPPs. Sorry, can you go back to one slide? Yes, one more. My apologies. Slide it advance. Yeah. So as far as the prioritization of the 5-year capital construction plan, we advance all the approved and funded projects, so they will be on the top of the list. And then we list all our FPPs next, and each college FPP is a top priority for the college. And the State Chancellor Office will look at each FPP individually, and each FPP will compete system-wide. As far as the IPPs, they will be listed as prioritized in the facility master plan, and the rest of the project that have been identified in the master plan will be included, and they will be deferred to the future upon a new general obligation bond. Next slide. So what we did this year, actually, we went back and looked at our 2020 IPPs and FPPs. None of our FPPs were approved, was approved because we did not have a local contribution. Then what we did, actually, we examined the capital load ratio for each college to determine what would be the eligible project for capital outlay funding, and then maximize the scoring. And then the committee really recommended the project that receives higher scoring because they have the higher opportunity for approval. This year, the recommendation has been recommended to have 50% local contribution for each FPP, which will provide us additional 50 points. As I mentioned, the state requires us minimum 25, but we including 50%, 50 points. 50% local contribution, which provides 50 points, and that contingent upon future bond. And then I'll turn it over to Ms. Oscar to talk about the Moreno Valley project list.
Good evening, Madam President, Chancellor Isaac, and members of the board. Moreno Valley College engaged with Alma Strategies district facilities to revisit the FPPs and IPPs that were submitted last year. And as stated by Associate Vice Chancellor Aga, all MVC projects are growth projects. We evaluated eligible projects for funding opportunities and to maximize scoring. We focused on assessing campus space utilization, evaluated and adjusted the vision of success metrics and those spaces that could be coded as CTE. And of course, the 50% local contribution of the total project budget, which earned us an additional 50 points. Based on the prioritized projects listed before you, it was determined that the Library Learning Resource Center project puts the college in the best position for state funding. During this assessment, MVC examined the biological and physical science project as a possibility of moving this project up in queue as an FPP. And although we were able to gain some points in the new metric for the vision of success for the CTE category and local match, it was determined that the existing inventory would not impact the scoring enough to move it ahead of the Library Learning Resource Center. So that takes us to our existing library that we currently have at Moreno Valley College that lacks the space to accommodate the existing student body, is instructionally inadequate for the student's success in teaching, and has an outdated technology infrastructure that struggles to keep up with campus demands. Therefore, we at Moreno Valley College are excited at the prospect of having a new library learning resource center, which would allow us to increase our laboratory, office, library, and audiovisual media space capability, support vision for success goals by addressing learning resource and student support service needs on campus, update the infrastructure to support modern technologies and instructional delivery methods, provide consolidated and collaborative student learning environment, and implement the goals and objectives of the college educational and facilities master plan. Next slide. So the Library Learning Resource Center will be a 3-story building estimated at 50.9 million estimated project cost, 79,000 gross square footage and 53,000 assignable square footage. And now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague at Norco College, Vice President Collins.
Good evening, members of the board, Chancellor Isak. It's nice to be here tonight. For our Norco College projects, we have a final project proposal of the Library and Learning Resource Center, including a student services component. For initial project proposal, we have the STEM Phase 1, the Welcome Center, and the Social Behavioral Sciences. I'll start with the IPPs, the initial project proposals first. And just to describe, our STEM Phase 1 project aims to address the college's shortage of our wet lab space throughout campus, as documented in our current facilities master plan. It also intends to take a multidisciplinary approach in the STEM fields moving forward. Our Welcome Center intends to be a first stop for our students as they enter the college and step foot on the guided pathways that we've laid for them. It's a key element to our guided pathways planning with the goal of eliminating the guesswork that many of our students, when they show up on campus, feel they need a first stop. And also it's outlined in our facilities master plan as a focal point for the college. Our social and behavioral sciences IPP, or initial project proposal, is a general classroom and lab building in alignment with our facilities master plan and our educational master plan. It's driven by our program needs and growth planning, as well as all of those IPPs are growth projects. Now, I'd also like to say that our FPPs and our IPPs all include guided pathways components, engagement centers inside the buildings themselves. Next page. Just real quick, I'd like to explain to the board how excited Norco College is that the state's inclusion of the Norco College's Center for Human Performance Kinesiology has been approved for funding through the May revise. At least we're doing this right now. For preliminary plans and working drawings in the 21-22 budget year. So a big thanks goes out to our district team partners, as well as our board advocates who worked very hard to move this into a funding stage. So thank you very much on behalf of the entire college. Moving forward with our in alignment with our facilities master plan and our strategic plan, the Library Learning Resource Center and Student Services, FPP, is focused on our college's commitment to student success. As outlined in our recent facilities master plan, Norco College has a deficit in the student study and research space on campus. And this FPP brings together both the student services and the academic support services in a very collaborative type way. And this project does score the best in the new, in the state's new scoring matrix for capital outlay projects. As you can see here, this is a very high level program utilizing the 3 levels. It would be a three-story building due to our unique topographical considerations on campus. It's not a layout, but this is this outlines a space dedication in blocks. We've worked closely with our end users to develop the space needs and attempting to use program planning documents to look into the future and align with program plans in the coming years. You can see on the first floor is space that's easily accessed and obviously dedicated to student services. The second floor is our student academic support area. That's actually the main campus level, if you will. And on the third floor, it's library, research, study rooms on the third floor. So that describes our FPPs and our IPPs for this upcoming year. Thank you. Now I'll turn it back over to Assistant Vice Chancellor Aga.
Thank you so much. And I'm filling actually for Dr. West. He was not able to come in today. As far as Riverside City College project, the planning committee really followed the same approach as explained by Ms. Askar and Dr. Collins. The college has agreed on the cosmetology to be resubmitted for final project proposal, which receives 134 points. And prioritize and submitted the following IPPs this year plan, which are the Visual Art Complex, Phase 1, the Advanced Technology, and the MLK renovation. These projects were also identified in the Facility Master Plan and prioritized to be the highest priority project in the Educational Master Plan. Next slide, please. As far as the cosmetology project and the FPP, this project proposes a new Cosmo building, which is a growth category, as it really replaces the existing building and increases the square footage. This is why we called it growth. The new facility will accommodate the college enrollment by increasing instructional capacity for labs and faculty office space. The proposed building will be two-story building, and it provides 22,000 assignable square footage. It will include modern technology and infrastructure compatible with specialized equipment needs for the CTE programs. Per the Facility Master Plan, it will be located on the lower campus adjacent to Ramona Street entrance in parking lot F. The existing Cosmo will be demoed when this project comes online, and that will be a standalone project. Next slide please. This slide summarizes the local contribution needed for this year FPPs for Moreno Valley, Norco, and Riverside FPPs in the total amount of 71 million. On the right-hand side, it's basically our 50% local contribution for each single project and sum up to 57.1 million. And in the middle are the secondary effect, whether they are mainly the swing space that we need during construction that will not be supportable by the state, plus all the furniture and equipment, and that adds up to 14 million. With that, it concludes our presentation, and we'll be happy to answer any question.
Are there any questions? Any trustees? Comments? Mr. Brown?
I just wanted to emphasize, this whole capital construction program in the state is now dependent a lot on the the local contribution, which entails that we must have another general obligation bond. Right now, Prop 51, which funds the state program, is pretty much out of money. So moving forward, it's important that we're in line, but it also emphasizes the importance of having another general obligation bond so we can make our local contribution. We're very fortunate with our advocacy efforts related to Norco's project to get at least the preliminary plan working drawings portion funded. But moving forward, in order for us to continue on our implementation of our facilities master plans at each of the colleges, we're going to need to have local funding to be able to meet our match.
Thank you. All right. Moving on to the next report, the Riverside City College Life Science and Physical Science Reconstruction Project for Business Education and Computer Information Systems. Mr. Brown.
Thank you once again. Presented for the committee's consideration is a budget augmentation recommendation for the Riverside City College Life Science Physical Science Reconstruction Project. Associate Vice Chancellor Aga is here again to walk the committee through the justification for the augmentation request. Hussein.
Thank you so much, Oren. This board report is for the budget augmentation approval for the Riverside City College Life Science and Physical Science Reconstruction Project. This is a state-funded project in fiscal year 2020-21 in the total amount of 35 million. In August last year, the board approved the project and the project budget, and we received authorization to proceed with the prelim planning phase from the State Chancellor Office. And we engage an architect and other consultants. During the prelim planning phase, we discovered a couple of issues for the project. The first one was the structural safety. Because the reconstruction value has exceeded the replacement value, the Division of State Architect, which is the primary permitting agency, required us to comply with the California Administrative Code, which requires a mandatory structural and rehabilitation upgrades. The code rationale here, because we investing a significant capital to reconstruct the project, it's better to increase the longevity for the project for another 40, 50 years. And the structural seismic upgrade has become mandatory. Additionally, both buildings were built in 1967 and 1968, and they were expected to have some hazardous material. These materials used to be eligible back when in the 70s and 80s, and they were prohibited in 1990s. And we need to do an abatement and remediation for those materials. Once all facilities assessments and engineering analysis were complete, we updated the project budget, and it reflected a 3.1 million increase from the original approved budget. Although the State Chancellor Office has zero change policy for FPP, we submitted our request to the state, and we explained to them the structural issue and really the safety issue associated with the hazardous material. And we have gone through the process, and the Department of Finance approved the 3.1 additional augmentation in March this year. The allocation will be 76% state allocation with a 24% local contribution, as being approved originally in the FPP. In this report, we are asking the board to approve the revised project budget and the local contribution in the total amount of 748 from RCC local resources. And I'm open for any discussion.
Any questions, comments from trustees? No? All right. Oh, Mr. Brown.
Yeah, just wanted to say just a couple things on this. Hussein and his team were instrumental in advocating for this, putting together the information along with the consultants for identification, and then working with the state system. As you mentioned, it's not automatic that these kinds of augmentations occur. In fact, it's fairly rare. But Hussein was also very instrumental in bringing the deficiency in the state funding process to the forefront as it relates to seismic recognition, because the planning of these things occurs so far in advance, and you don't really know when you're doing a reconstruction project what you're really going to get into until you start doing hard preliminary planning, which means if you're really going to do it, you got to spend money that you're not assured of getting the reimbursement for. But through his efforts, the state's recognized that deficiency, and now he's been appointed or voluntold maybe on a statewide committee to help lead the effort to make changes with DSA to get these kinds of things funded at the start rather than getting into a project and realizing you have a deficiency in budget. So.
Right on. All right, the next report is the tentative budget for fiscal year 2021-22 and notice of public hearing on the fiscal year 2021-22 final budget. Mr. Brown.
Thank you. Last but certainly not least is the 2021 tentative budget. As mentioned last month, what a difference a year makes, as well as a difference in the last few months. I just, at least between the governor's initial proposal in January and the May revise, I just read a report on cash collections of property tax, income tax, corporate tax, and sales tax. Significant increases over what was originally proposed to the tune of over $18 billion, which is a huge, huge increase in a very short period of time. Next page. Go ahead and scroll through that. So the tentative budget is really a continuing resolution with some modifications for some known items. But there still are a lot of items that are not known at this point. We haven't gone through year-end closing. The state budget hasn't been adopted, and I'll get into some of the gyrations with the state budget in just a few minutes. But we essentially just need this to be able to operate, to be able to expend until the final budget is adopted in September. Next page. So for Prop 98, the minimum guarantee, of which we are a partner with K-14, I'll use that loosely as it relates to funding since they receive so much more than we do, but on a per student basis. But originally the 2021 K-14 budget was guaranteed at 70.9. It's now at 92.8 billion. A significant increase over where, again, we were a year ago. The governor estimates at the May revised 93.7 billion, which consists of $486 million of ongoing funding and $1,298 million in one-time policy adjustments for the community colleges. And we maintain our share at 10.93%. Next page. We received notice on May 12th from the Chancellor's office that the emergency protections for apportionment was extended for another year into the 21-22 year. This will be the final extension according to the Chancellor's office. What this does is it provides us protection to mitigate material decreases in system-wide apportionments, primarily as it relates to not primarily, as it relates to FTS declines, of which we have had significant decline ourselves. As I mentioned, this will be the final extension of the emergency protections. Next page. Oh, I'm sorry. Good, you're already there, way ahead of me. So what's changed since the May revise, or since the January proposal? The primary change in the May revise is an increase in COLA from 1.5% to 4.05%. As we go along, I'll also identify what the legislature has proposed as well in the various categories. For ongoing revenues, they have proposed a 5.07% COLA, which is additional $75 million into the system. Next page. So the May revise proposed about $94 million in new programs consisting of vocational training for ESL students, integrated basic needs, program pathways, and library services platform. The legislature has agreed, and let me preface the legislative process at this point. Typically what happens is you have the Senate and the Assembly preparing their own budget recommendations or proposals, then they get together and reconcile. What they did this year is they got together ahead of time to avoid the reconciliation process. So essentially they have already agreed and now are just negotiating with the governor on what will or won't be included. So one of the agreements that they came up with for the legislature is to reduce the ESL students by 50 million, program pathways technology by 10. They have added financial aid administration, $10 million, $28 million for strong workforce, $10 million for the LGBTQ plus centers, $53 million for COLA to Emoja, Mesa, Puente, and the EOPS program. Significantly, they've provided a substantial amount of funding for part-time faculty office hours to the tune of 75 million, and for part-time faculty hiring in the amount of $170 million. They're estimating that would result in about 2,000 new full-time faculty positions. Next page. So the difference between the January proposal and the May revise involves an increase to retention and enrollment strategies, work-based learning, and zero textbook costs. The legislature has proposed a $20 million reduction in work-based learning, a $100 million reduction in zero textbook costs. I'm having trouble with that, so I think I'll just pass on with that. And they have proposed a increase to AB 1460 implementation in the amount of $50 million. One of the other things that has been proposed by the legislature is elimination of Calbright College. I don't think that one's a settled one yet. They're still negotiating, I think, because that is a priority item for the governor. So we'll see where that one ends up. Next page. Oh, you got it. Okay, guided pathways was, well, you can see all of the new programs that were proposed in the May revise totaling about $346 million. Changes that have been proposed by the legislature is to reduce guided pathways implementation by 100 million, reducing dual enrollment expansion by 75 million, transition back to in-person instruction by 50 million, and competency-based education by 10 million. Next page. So for the deferred maintenance and instructional equipment, there was a huge increase just from the January proposal to the May revise of 314 million. A legislative increase has been proposed in the amount of 174 million on top of that 314. So a significant amount of money looks like it's coming our way as far as deferred maintenance instructional equipment. And that doesn't include the $250 million that's designated for that purpose from the federal American Rescue Plan funding. As was talked about previously, there's a number of new continuing and new projects for Prop 51, including Norco College's Center for Human Performance and Kinesiology. Next page. A couple items here. Pension relief, as it was proposed by the governor in the May revised, did not reflect any changes. That's primarily because it was a 2-year budget plan for limiting the increase of both PERS and STIRS. But still on the still to come and still on the table is a potential increase to the amount of funding that would be used to reduce the pension liabilities. So we'll have to wait and see. The budget should be approved by January 15th, and we'll see what the outcome is at that point. As it relates to apportionment deferrals, there's $153 million that the legislature has agreed to put towards the apportionment deferral issue, which would essentially eliminate most, if not all, of the deferrals that we experienced in the 2021 year. For student housing, there was a proposal for $4 billion in one-time non-Prop 98 funding spread over 2 years, 60% of which would come to the community colleges for either new construction or renovation of existing properties for student housing. The legislature has not approved that. However, heard late last week, that it's still in play. It's a high priority item from the governor, and we're crossing our fingers and hoping for sure that that thing will still be coming through because we could sure use it for our district. For student financial aid, there really was no change from the January proposal. The proposal increased the number of Cal Grant awards by 9,000 to bring it to 50,000. So then, I'm sorry, next page. So as we get into our own budget for 2020, the starting point for the 21-22 budget is always the prior year ending balance. And so as we start walking through this, I'll identify some revenue and expenditure items that both positive and negative that has impacted us during this fiscal year, at least at what we're estimating until we get through the closing process. So on the revenue side, we're estimating that we're going to receive additional apportionment of about 3.48, and that's primarily a result of the lack of a deficit that's going to be applied. We took the advance apportionment numbers that came from the chancellor's office, which included a fairly large deficit. It does, because of all the funding that's coming into the system, it doesn't look like we're going to end up with much of a deficit at all. And we also recorded a significant amount of indirect costs, primarily as a result of being able to take our indirect cost percentage related to the HERF funding that came from the feds. Next page. On the expenditure side, have to hand it to everybody in the district. They did a fantastic job in managing costs through the 2021 year. We got together with the colleges and came up with a plan to save costs and utilities, travel, deferring position recruitments and so forth. And by and large, I think our plan came to fruition. We realized significant savings for this fiscal year, which will help us as we move into subsequent years. Again, we're estimating it total expenditure budget savings approaching $36 million. We're estimating a current year surplus of about 15 on top of our beginning balance that we entered the year with of 41 million. We're estimating our ending balance at about $57 million. Next page. Keep going. So some of the assumptions that were put in place for development of the 21-22 tentative budget. Primarily online instruction for summer, and then face-to-face instruction back for beginning in fall through the remainder of the year. We're estimating a small apportionment deficit. We have included our resident credit FTS target of 31,840. We built in a COLA based on the January proposal. We didn't get the information of the May revise in time to fold it into the tentative budget. It's at 1.5%, but we know that it's going to be much larger than that. And of course, we will fold that in not only to the revenue side when we know what the exact amount is or exact percentage, but also on the salary side that gets passed through. We've included step and column professional growth, PERS and STIRS increases, and adjustments to healthcare pending final rates. Next page. On the revenue side, we're estimating an increase in apportionment. Again, that's primarily as a result of we have apportionment adjustments that affects 2 years. It affects the year that it occurred, and then it also rolls over as part of the ongoing base to increase the next year. That's what the 3.29 represents. Since we don't have we have a FTS decline, we're not growing in enrollment, so we're not realizing additional apportionment from that for that purpose. And we're estimating a pretty significant decline in interest income, and that's basically 2 factors. One is the deferrals that we incurred, as well as a huge drop off in the interest rates that we earn at the county treasury. Next page. On the expenditure side, again, we folded in 1.5% COLA. Again, we know that it's going to be larger than that, so we will adjust when we know it. We've factored in step and column. We were informed that we had a large increase in our unemployment insurance rate from 0.05% to 1.23%, which resulted in a 1.69% increase. However, we were just informed this past week that that rate will be substantially reduced. Not sure what the final rate is going to be, and we're still pursuing possible refunding or reimbursement through HERF funding because we believe that that increase is entirely related to the pandemic. We've estimated the PERS and STIRS costs at the applicable percentages, and we're identifying preliminarily a decrease to the PPO rate and increases to Health Net, and Kaiser is still yet to be determined. Next page. We have put in here primarily a placeholder for contracts, and that's related to providing funding until we determine where the best source of funding is going to come from. If we treat it like we have in previous years, and this is related to a RCC ADA litigation case that we were required to perform mitigation on. This is the last year for completing that in accordance with the court order. And so the amount that's reflected there is the primarily related to that. And by the time we get to the final budget, we'll determine where the best place to fund that out of. In prior years, we funded it out of deferred maintenance for the most part. It's been an ongoing mitigation process, and we've been reporting out on that. But this is the final year to make sure that we get that taken care of. Next page. There are no one-time revenue budget items at this point in the general fund. And for one-time expenditure items, you'll see some ins and outs related to set-asides, budget reduction plan, summer shift, budget savings, and indirect costs. So all told, when you look at the ongoing and the one-time budget in comparison to the estimated beginning balance, we're then providing for a 5% ending balance target to balance our budget. The next steps include the adoption of the RCCD tentative budget, then the state budget adoption, as well as our final budget in September. So that concludes my remarks. Happy to entertain any questions you may have.
All right, any questions or comments from trustees? All right, thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank
And
you.
with that, I hand it back to you, Madam President.
That is the last item on the agenda tonight. And there is no other business, and we have already done our business. And we've already done our closed session. So at this point, if there's not any questions or any follow-up, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Good night, everybody.